Okay, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the literature review when you're doing research. The literature review is actually really important. It's probably the most important part of research because the literature review really just shows you what is known about your topic and what is not known about your topic, and it helps to guide your research project in what direction it's going to go in so that you know really what you need to study. So what a literature search is not, as you can see on this slide, it's not just a collection of summaries about things. It's not your opinion. Basically what your job is in a literature review is to look at what's out there, put it all together and synthesize that information so that you can tell your reader, you know, here's what's out there, here's what's going on, and here's where we need to go. Sources of literature review come from just about anywhere. It comes from journals, it can come from the internet, it can come from newspapers, it can come from dissertations, it can come from encyclopedias. Look, they have encyclopedias on here twice, I just noticed that. But it can come from all sorts of places. For most of our intents and purposes in nursing research, the majority of our sources are going to come from journals or dissertations, theses, things like that. Now, data content come from two basic types of sources or components. Theoretical literature, which is things like concepts, models, theories, and then empirical literature, which is basically knowledge, studies. So it's things that compare the findings of other research. When you're doing a literature review, most of the time you're going to be looking at empirical literature. So you're going to be looking at what other studies were out there, looking at the types of things that you're going to be studying. The quality of the data that you want to be looking at, basically there's three types of sources. There's primary sources, secondary sources, and tertiary sources. The highest quality is going to come from primary sources, which are original studies. Those are things that are written by the people, the researchers who actually did the studies. So you're looking at things right here like journal articles written by the people who did the studies. Dissertations and theses, which were studies written by students who actually did studies. Secondary sources are things like right here where you're looking at reviews, which are things that we call meta-analyses or systematic reviews, which is where somebody looked at a whole compilation of different studies and then they kind of summarized what the findings were of all those different studies. It might also come from bibliographies or databases, things like that. Tertiary study sources are other things like what you find on Google. You can see right here Wikipedia, different things like that. These are very low quality data sources. There's another slide later on in this Versal program that shows you a little video that explains a little bit more about meta-analysis and systematic reviews. That's going to be important for you as you go on to get to your last assignment, the critique of an article. Because as you go to find your articles, you're going to find that you need to find primary sources. For your articles, you cannot use meta-analysis or systematic reviews, so it's really important that you understand what the differences are. So it's a good little video for you to watch to make sure that you understand. Okay, finding your literature. Sometimes it gets a little tricky trying to find studies that point to the topic that you're looking for. The most critical thing here is looking for key terms that will point you in the right direction. This website here, and there's a slide later on in Versal that will let you click or link directly to this so that you can go through and it shows you how to define your key terms really well, because that's kind of the hardest thing, and you're going to need to use this skill as you're looking for articles to critique for your final assignment. So it's a really good link to kind of show you how to define your terms. But that's really the key. You know, if you're looking for example, students falling asleep in class, and does that have a relationship to their grade? How do you narrow down those terms in order to find really good articles to get the information that you're looking for? Quality literature. You want to find literature that's going to give you the best results possible, the highest quality, the most valid research out there. This slide kind of goes through what's the highest quality. So you can see here, you know, just getting expert opinions, not very high quality, whereas randomized controlled trials are pretty high quality. Systematic reviews give you pretty high quality because it's summarizing basically all the literature that's available. And then you want to look for what's reliable. This is a really good chart here because it shows you an unfamiliar website not very reliable, whereas you've got academic journals which are the most reliable. If you look at an author's background, somebody who's an expert in the field is far more reliable than just some person off the street. If you've got an article that has no sources, not very reliable, whereas one that's got very good citations is going to be very reliable. So you want to look at those things when you're looking at your articles. That's what you're looking for as you're doing your literature review. Now, when you write your literature review, this is kind of the steps that you go through. You research your primary sources, you analyze and select what studies you want to use and which ones you don't want to use. Go through, read them, put all your findings together, and then talk about the general conclusions. In your book, on pages 178 through 185, it goes through these same steps, but it breaks them down a little bit more in detail. So you might want to go look at those steps a little bit more in depth so that you're a little bit more familiar with with the steps you want to take. As you're reading your articles, this is how you synthesize your information and determine what information you want to actually use, like whether or not you want to use this article or not. So for each source, you can see over here, for each source, what was the problem? What questions did they ask? What was the evidence? What were the methods, the participants' instrumentation, and then what were the findings? What was the data? What were their conclusions? What were the recommendations? So as you do that for each article that you read, and it really helps to make a table and write all this stuff out in a table. And then after you do that, for all of those, then you summarize all of them. And then how do these sources teach your readers about this topic? What details do the readers need to know? And then summarize the key points, connect them to your study, what studies oppose yours and what studies support your study. Which of these articles support your studies to make it stronger. And that's how you put that together into a whole literature review. I'm bringing this up because in a literature review, because it's so important to studies, this is one of the key things, like nursing students and novice nurses. This is one of the things that you can very easily do to contribute to the research process. You don't always have to be like the researcher. You can always contribute to the research process by doing things like contributing to the research, to the literature review. So it is something that you can do to contribute to that process.